A few days later, the company hosted a small office party. Nothing too fancy, just a casual after-hours gathering to celebrate reaching a project milestone. The office cafeteria was decorated with string lights and soft music filled the air. Everyone was laughing, mingling, letting their guards down for once. You nervously stood by the snack table, nibbling on a cookie, trying to blend in. Social gatherings weren't really your strength. You glanced around. Most of your team was chatting animatedly. Even Minjun was surrounded by a small crowd, cracking jokes and making everyone laugh. You smiled. At least he was having fun. Meanwhile, across the room, Jin stood near the glass windows, holding a glass of water, detached as ever. His gaze swept across the room absently, until it found you. You were laughing at something Minjun said, a real, bright laugh that made your eyes crinkle. For a reason he couldn't explain, Jin's chest tightened slightly. He sipped his water, pretending not to care. But his eyes never really left you. Minjun, being the sharp flirt he was, noticed. He grinned mischievously. Making his way toward you, he slung an arm casually over your shoulders. "Come on, intern," he teased loudly. "At least pretend to enjoy the party." You laughed, playfully shoving him off. "I'm trying. I'm just not good at these things." He ruffled your hair, again, laughing. Jin, across the room, frowned slightly without realizing it. Minjun's arm around your shoulders. Your easy smiles. An unfamiliar, unwanted feeling stirred in Jin's chest. Jealousy. Tiny. Silent. But real. He didn't even know why it bothered him so much. Just then, Jaiwoo appeared beside Jin, holding 2 drinks. "Appa," she whined sweetly, offering him a cocktail. "I brought you something. You must be so bored alone." Jin barely glanced at her. "I don't drink at office events," he said flatly. Jaiwoo pouted dramatically. "You're no fun, Appa. Let's at least dance later." Before he could reply, she suddenly clutched his arm, laughing exaggeratedly, trying to show everyone around them how close they were. You happened to glance their way, and froze. Seeing Jaiwoo clinging onto Jin sent a weird, sharp ache through your chest. You quickly looked away, focusing hard on your cookie. You had no right to feel upset. You weren't anything to him. Still, it hurt a little. Across the room, Minjun noticed your sudden silence. He leaned closer and whispered teasingly, "Oh ho! Don't tell me our little intern is jealous." You jumped. "And no," you stammered, cheeks burning. Minjun smirked. "Relax, Y/N. You're way cuter than that plastic doll." You gaped at him, scandalized. "Manager Minjun." He just winked and walked off, leaving you flustered and confused. Meanwhile, Jin, feeling Jaiwoo's fake laughter and fake touch, gently but firmly removed her hand. "I have work early tomorrow," he said shortly. Without waiting for her reply, he left her standing there, embarrassed, and made his way out of the party. But not before his gaze briefly, fleetingly, found yours again. For just a moment, your eyes met, and something unspoken passed between you. A question. A hesitation. You clutched your cookie tighter, heart pounding. Jin turned away quickly and disappeared into the night. From a corner of the room, Jaiwoo watched the whole scene unfold, her fists clenching around her glass. He looked at her. Not me. Hatred simmered hotter than ever inside her. She needed to do something. Something permanent. And soon. The following Monday, the office atmosphere felt strange. Whispers floated around the hallways. People threw sneaky glances your way. You hugged your files tighter to your chest, feeling uneasy but not knowing why. Until it happened. During the regular weekly team meeting, while everyone was gathered around the large conference table, Jaiwoo barged into the room. Dressed in a designer outfit, holding a stack of papers with a triumphant smirk. Everyone fell silent. Jin looked up, eyebrows knitting slightly. Jaiwoo cleared her throat dramatically. "I have something to share," she announced, pretending to sound official. You shrank in your seat, feeling that unmistakable twist of dread in your stomach. She tossed a few printed papers onto the center of the table. Mock evidence. Photoshopped screenshots again. Fake conversations. all designed to make it look like you were gossiping about the company and clients online. You gasped softly, your hands trembling. You knew it was a lie. But how could you prove it right now? Jaiwo smiled sweetly, fake and venomous. Frankly, she said loudly, making sure everyone heard, I'm surprised our company hires such careless interns. Some employees exchanged awkward glances. Others smirked behind their hands, enjoying the drama. You felt like the ground was disappearing beneath your feet. But before anyone could say anything further, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Everyone turned. Jin stood up. His eyes locked on Jaiwo, cold, sharp, furious. His voice cut through the room like a blade. That's enough. The entire room froze. Jaiwo blinked, caught off guard. But Appa, I said. Jin repeated, slower, icier, enough. He walked around the table, picking up the fake papers, flipping through them once. Then he tossed them back down with clear disgust. These are forged. Any amateur can see that. Jaiwo paled visibly. Jin didn't stop there. He turned, facing the entire room. If I hear anyone spreading false rumors about my employees again. He let the sentence hang, the unspoken threat crystal clear. Dead silence. Everyone lowered their eyes, pretending to work. And then, to your shock, Jin walked up to you directly. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked at you with those deep, serious eyes. Then, in a low voice only you could hear, he said, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Your breath caught. No one had ever defended you like that before. You bowed deeply, voice shaking. Thank you, sir. Jin nodded once, lingering a second longer than necessary, before turning sharply on his heel and leaving the room. Jaiwo stood there, humiliated and burning with rage. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. Worse, Jin had chosen you. Publicly. It was the beginning of the end for her patience. She wouldn't hold back anymore. Later that day, Minjun found you sitting alone in the break room, staring at your untouched sandwich. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, shaking his head with a half-smile. You really are something, he said. You blinked up at him. Huh. He chuckled. You make even the ICEO break his rules. You flushed crimson. I didn't do anything. Minjun smirked, walking over to ruffle your hair again. Exactly, little intern. You just exist. That's your magic. You laughed weakly, feeling the tension in your chest finally loosen a little. Far above, in his glass office, Jin stood by the window, gazing down at the break room. Watching you laugh softly with Minjun. Something in his chest stirred again. Possessiveness. Protectiveness. He didn't know what you had done to him. But one thing was becoming very, very clear. He couldn't ignore you anymore. That evening, you stayed behind to finish some pending tasks. The office was almost empty, quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional flicker of lights. You sat at your desk, eyes heavy with exhaustion, organizing papers carefully. You didn't notice the soft footsteps approaching until a deep voice spoke. You're still here. You nearly jumped out of your seat. Looking up, you saw Jin standing a few feet away, holding a coffee cup. For the first time, there was no coldness on his face. No distance. Only something softer. Concern. You stood up quickly, bowing awkwardly. Yes, sir. I just wanted to finish these reports before tomorrow. Jin stared at you for a long moment. Then, without a word, he walked over and placed the coffee cup gently on your desk. For you, he said simply. You blinked. Me. He nodded, almost awkwardly. You work hard. You deserve it. Your heart squeezed painfully. You bowed again, cheeks burning. Thank you, sir. He gave a faint, almost invisible smile, the first real one you had ever seen from him. You can call me Jin, when it's just the two of us, he said quietly. Your breath hitched. You nodded dumbly, unable to find words. He watched you for another second, as if he wanted to say more, then turned and walked away, leaving you standing there with a racing heart. Meanwhile, from the far end of the hallway, Minjun leaned casually against a wall, witnessing the whole exchange with a knowing smirk. As Jin disappeared down the corridor, Minjun sauntered over to you, hands in his pockets. He peeked into your coffee cup dramatically. "Wow," he teased. "A coffee from the CEO himself. Someone's moving up in the world." You punched his arm lightly, embarrassed. "It's not like that. He was just being nice." Minjun chuckled, ruffling your hair, again. "You're so cute when you panic. Relax. Y/N. I'm just teasing." You pouted. "Manager Minjun, you always tease me." He winked. "Only because you react so adorably." You laughed, feeling a little lighter again. But somewhere, deep in your heart, Jin's gentle voice still echoed. "You can call me Jin." Meanwhile, inside her expensive car parked outside the building, Jaiwoo clenched the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She had seen everything. The coffee. The soft smile Jin reserved only for you. Her teeth ground together in pure rage. "This won't do," she muttered bitterly. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Hello. It's me." "I need a favor," she said sharply. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. This time, she won't escape. The next morning started normal enough. You arrived at the office early, clutching a bag of pastries you had picked up for your team. Bright-eyed, you smiled and greeted everyone warmly, just like you always did. But today, the smiles you received back were colder. Forced. Almost pitying. You didn't understand why. Until Minjun rushed over to you, pulling you aside with an unusual frown on his playful face. "Y/N," he whispered urgently. "Something's wrong. Big wrong." Your heart thudded painfully. "What happened?" Minjun grimaced, hesitating. Then he handed you a printed email. It was supposedly from you, complaining rudely about the CEO, bad-mouthing the company, even mocking Jaiwoo by name. It was vicious. Ugly. You gasped, hands trembling. I never wrote this." "I know," Minjun said firmly, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "But it's spreading fast. Jai was behind it, no doubt." Tears welled up in your eyes. You had never spoken ill of anyone, not even the ones who treated you like a servant. Why would anyone believe this? Before you could react further, an assistant from Jin's office appeared. "The CEO wants to see you." Now. The hallway felt endless as you followed the assistant up to the top floor. Your palms were sweaty. Your knees were weak. When the doors opened, Jin sat behind his sleek black desk, arms folded, face unreadable. You bowed deeply. Sir, I swear I didn't." "Sit," he said calmly, gesturing to the chair opposite him. You sat down shakily, head bowed. Jin studied you for a long, suffocating moment. Then, without looking away, he slid a familiar file across the desk. The fake email. "You've seen this." You nodded, tears brimming in your eyes. "I swear, sir, Jin, I didn't write it. I would never." Jin's lips pressed into a hard line. He leaned back slowly, still watching you. Then, to your shock, he spoke softly. "I know." You blinked, stunned. He knew. You whispered, voice cracking. "You believe me." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You're many things, Y/N," he said gently, "but a liar isn't one of them." You bit your lip, tears spilling over. Jin stood up, walking around the desk until he stood in front of you. He handed you a tissue wordlessly. You took it with trembling hands. "No one will touch you," he said, voice firm now. "Not while you're under my company." "Under me." Your heart slammed against your ribs. You wiped your tears quickly, bowing over and over. Thank you, I." He shook his head. "You shouldn't have to thank someone for believing the truth." For a moment, your eyes locked. And something passed between you. Something neither of you dared name yet. Meanwhile, outside the office, Minjun leaned against the wall casually, pretending to check his phone. When Jaiwoo walked past, smirking in triumph, Minjun raised an eyebrow lazily. "You really think you're smart, don't you, princess?" he muttered under his breath. Jaiwoo shot him a dirty look but kept walking. But if she thought it was over, she was wrong. Because this time, She hadn't just messed with an innocent intern. She had picked a fight with Kim Seok-jin's heart. And no one, absolutely no one, could win against that. The atmosphere at work felt different after the incident. Maybe it was just you being overly sensitive. Or maybe it was the fact that Kim Seok-jin, your cold and distant CEO, suddenly wasn't so cold anymore. It started small. That morning, as you juggled 3 coffee cups and your bag, you almost tripped getting into the elevator. A strong hand reached out and caught your elbow gently. You gasped, looking up, straight into Jin's deep, unreadable eyes. "Careful," he said quietly, barely above a whisper. You nodded, cheeks burning, mumbling a soft, "Thank you." To your surprise, Jin didn't immediately let go. Only when the elevator chimed did he gently release you, stepping back with an awkward cough. The few employees inside exchanged curious glances. But you, innocent as ever, thought nothing strange. "They're so kind," you thought again. Later that day, you sat at your desk sorting files when Min-jun sauntered over, a mischievous glint in his eyes. He leaned casually against your desk. "So," he said, twirling a pen between his fingers, "when are you going to tell me your secret?" You blinked at him, confused. "My secret?" Min-jun smirked. "You know, how you magically tamed the Ice King." You stared, horrified. "Tamed? I didn't do anything." He laughed at your reaction, loud and carefree. "I'm just teasing, sunshine," he said, ruffling your hair lightly. "But seriously, Jin Hyung doesn't smile at anyone like he does at you." You looked down quickly, flustered. You hadn't noticed. You were too busy trying not to spill coffee on yourself most days. Meanwhile, inside his glass office, Jin sat behind his desk, pretending to review a file. But his eyes kept wandering, out the transparent glass wall, toward you. You, with your messy stack of papers. Your slightly crooked ponytail. The way you smiled brightly even when no one seemed to notice. He hated how the others treated you like a servant. And he hated even more the little tug he felt in his chest whenever you smiled at someone else. Jin frowned slightly, confused by himself. Was it pity? No. It was something else. Something much harder to admit. He tapped his pen against his desk thoughtfully. You were different. You weren't trying to catch his attention. You weren't like them. Maybe that's why he kept finding excuses to look at you. But outside that warm bubble, darkness was stirring. Jae-woo sat in a luxury cafe, tapping her long nails against her coffee cup. She sneered as she watched a social media post of you helping organize a company event. "He's noticing her," she hissed under her breath. "He's protecting her." Her assistant shifted nervously beside her. "Should we do something?" Jae-woo's lips curved into a malicious smile. "Of course," she said sweetly. She wasn't going to let a pathetic little intern steal what belonged to her. No. Not without a fight. The morning was a bit too quiet for your liking. You sat at your desk, staring at your screen but not really seeing the words. Your mind kept drifting back to the moments you had shared with Jin, those small, fleeting moments where he'd smiled at you or helped you with a heavy file. Was it just you, or was he really starting to care about you? The thought made your heart race and your head spin. But you quickly shook it off. You couldn't think like that. Not when your role here was so temporary. You were just an intern, nothing more. But Jae-woo, she was a different story. She was everywhere these days, showing up at meetings, standing too close to Jin, smiling that wicked smile of hers. Her father was Jin's business partner, so she had always been around, but now, it seemed she was on a mission. To make you disappear. The moment you stepped into the break room to grab a quick lunch, Jae-woo was there, casually lounging on the counter with her arms crossed. Her eyes glinted with a mix of superiority and disdain. You froze at the doorway. "Y/N," Jae-woo said, her voice sweet, but there was a dark edge underneath. "I've been looking for you." You smiled politely, not sensing the storm brewing. "Yes, Jae-woo. Is there something I can help you with?" Her smile twisted into something more sinister. "Oh no. I don't need your help, darling. But you might need mine." Before you could respond, Jae-woo stepped toward you and flicked a hand dismissively. You had no time to react before she bumped into you, sending your coffee cup flying and splattering all over her pristine white dress. You gasped, horrified. I am so sorry. I didn't. Jaiwa's face twisted in fury as she stepped back, glaring at you with disgust. You poor little thing, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You can't even hold a cup properly? And you think you're worthy of being here? She looked you up and down, disgusted. I'll have you fired for this. You ruined my dress. Your heart dropped into your stomach, and you stood frozen, too shocked to speak. But then, a deep voice rang out from the doorway. Jaiwo. You turned in shock. It was Jin. He stood in the doorway, his posture straight and his gaze unflinching. There was something in his eyes, something that wasn't just anger, but protectiveness. Jaiwa's eyes widened slightly, and she quickly wiped her face, trying to mask the frustration. Jin, darling, your little intern here ruined my dress. I'm going to have to report her. She can't even do something as simple as carry coffee properly. Jin walked in, his gaze never leaving Jaiwa's. You have no right to fire anyone, he said calmly, his voice carrying a weight that made the air in the room heavy. And you, he added, turning to you, don't have to apologize. It was an accident. Jaiwa opened her mouth to protest, but Jin raised a hand, cutting her off. Apologize to her. No. Jaiwa's face turned red with fury. She opened her mouth, clearly ready to lash out, but Jin's unwavering gaze silenced her. Reluctantly, she muttered a cold, sorry. You barely heard it, too shaken by the intensity in the room. But Jin wasn't finished. He turned to face Jaiwa completely, his eyes narrowing. You should be more careful with how you treat people here, Jaiwa, he said, his tone low. The way you treat others says more about you than it does about them. Jaiwa's lips twisted, and her eyes narrowed in hatred. I see, she said, trying to mask her fury. I'll make sure to remember that. With a sharp look, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, leaving the tension hanging in the air like a storm cloud. You stood there, heart racing. Had Jin just defended you? No one had ever stood up for you like that. Not in this office. Not like that. As the day went on, things felt different. You found yourself stealing glances at Jin whenever you could. His presence felt heavier, more protective. Minjun caught you staring at Jin's office door and winked. You've got him wrapped around your finger, huh? He teased, a playful grin on his face. You blinked in surprise, a little flustered. What? No, I don't think so. Minjun's grin only grew. Sure. He looks like he'd take on a whole army for you. You felt your cheeks warm at his words, but you didn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Jaiwa seethed in her corner of the office, her mind spinning with plans. She would not let some innocent intern stand in her way. Not when she was so close to what she wanted. She had already lost her temper today, but next time, she wouldn't make the same mistake. This time, she'd make sure you were gone for good. She wouldn't just make you disappear from the office, she'd make you regret ever crossing her. The day was winding down. You sat at your desk, organizing papers quietly as the soft hum of the office surrounded you. Most employees had already left, leaving the building bathed in a calming golden glow from the setting sun. You didn't realize you were smiling to yourself, thinking about everything that had happened these past few weeks. How Jin had defended you. How he had started to smile at you more. How he seemed different around you. But you quickly shook your head, laughing softly. No way. He's the CEO. And I'm just an intern. You didn't notice the sound of footsteps approaching until it was too late. You looked up. And there he was. Kim Seokjin. Or just Jin, standing quietly in front of your desk, hands in his pockets, looking, for the first time, nervous. Y/N, he said, his voice softer than you had ever heard. You immediately stood up, bowing politely. Ah, CEO Kim. I was just finishing up. Jin, he interrupted gently. You blinked at him, confused. Call me Jin, he repeated, his lips curving into a small smile. You stared at him, feeling your heart thud painfully in your chest. Why was the world suddenly so quiet? Why did it feel like it was just the two of you left on Earth? He took a hesitant step closer. I owe you an apology, Jin said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. For misunderstanding you. For assuming you were like the others. You shook your head quickly, flustered. No, it's okay, It's not okay, he said, cutting you off, but his voice was so tender that it didn't sound harsh at all. You're not like anyone I've ever met before, Y/N. You stared at him, wide-eyed. He chuckled under his breath, looking down for a moment as if gathering courage. You're genuine, Jin said slowly, choosing his words carefully. You make this cold place feel warm. And without even trying, you. He trailed off, looking almost shy. You made me want to smile again. For a moment, neither of you moved. Then, as if pulled by a force stronger than either of you could resist, Jin took another step forward. Y/N, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know when it started. I don't know how. But when I look at you, I feel like I'm finally breathing after holding my breath for years. Your eyes blurred with sudden emotion. You opened your mouth, but no words came out. Instead, you did the only thing your heart told you to do. You stepped into him. And without hesitation, Jin caught you gently in his arms. It wasn't a rushed, desperate hug. It was soft, warm, as if the whole world melted away, and the only thing that existed was the feeling of his arms around you. You buried your face in his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat against your cheek. Jin's hand came up, cradling the back of your head protectively. Neither of you said anything for a long moment. There was no need. The hug said it all. You belonged, not in a world of errands and loneliness, but in the quiet warmth of someone who saw you for who you really were. Later, when you finally pulled back, Jin looked down at you with a small, almost bashful smile. Stay by my side, he said quietly. Not as an intern. You looked up at him, heart full to the brim, and nodded, without a single doubt. Outside the office window, the city lights twinkled like a sky full of stars. A new chapter was just beginning. And this time, you wouldn't be walking through it alone.